You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change. I'm your host, Gunter. Please let me welcome all those new people who are dipping their toe in to see what I'm talking about, what I'm on about, and where I'd like us to go. And for those of you who've been dipping in for a while and have subscribed, thank you very much. For those of you who haven't, please subscribe. It all helps to keep the podcast going. So, we've been doing some talking about men and aging in particular. And so this is probably, I'd say, one of the more important topics in the whole process. Not that any of them are not important, but I think this one especially is close to my heart because it's an area that I often find myself wading into with the guys that I work with, who are fundamentally, exploring their existential crisis, for want of a better word, their philosophical, moral crisis in some instances. So let me put a couple of questions to you. So are you fundamentally navigating the changes and challenges that come with aging? Most of us have to put up our hand and go, yep, that's me. Because it doesn't matter whether you're 25, 35, 45, we're aging. Okay? Now, the other question that I think is important to look at is that, are you finding yourself grappling with questions of morality, mortality, seeking deeper meaning, or seeking comfort amid loss? If that's the case, and I suspect most of us are, then it's time to explore the often overlooked yet vital aspect of aging, and that's spirituality. We've spoken about, aging in the body, aging in the mind, aging in society. Well, this one is about spirituality. So before we dip any further into this topic, one of the things I want to make sure is that we're basically on the same page when it comes to definitions. So let me define the difference between understanding spirituality and that of religiosity. Okay, this is very, very important. So in my view, spirituality is a broad concept with room for lots of different perspectives. It generally includes a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves. Typically, and here we go, involving a search for meaning in life. Spirituality is deeply personal and individual. It is, by definition, an inward journey that looks at one's inner values, purpose, and the essence of being. It doesn't necessarily involve specific rituals or practices, and it isn't always associated with a particular religious belief. And let me stress that this is absolutely fundamentally important. Now, people may describe a spiritual experience as something sacred or transcendent, or simply a deep sense of aliveness and interconnectedness. Now, if I just take those couple of words and put them into the experience in my life, that pretty well sums up surfing for me in many respects. But so did having my first and second child. Okay? So it is about these definitions, the definitions of something bigger. Our spiritual practices also include things like meditation, mindfulness, prayer, contemplation, being in nature, or any other practices that help someone to feel connected and find a sense of peace and purpose. Now, on the other hand, religiosity to me means or refers to the extent of the involvement in some religious institution or the adherence to a set of beliefs or practices associated with a specific religion. Now, this typically involves specific doctrines, rituals, and communal practices. Religiosity is often more outwardly expressed and communal, marked by participation in a religious community and adherences to shared beliefs and rituals. Now, having said that, I've got to point out that spirituality can be a part of religious practice. One can be spiritual without religion, and vice versa. The key difference is that spirituality is more about personal growth and finding inner peace and purpose and meaning. Right? In contrast, religiosity is more about a communal practice, about the rituals that we have as a group and the shared beliefs. Right? So it's like celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, Shabbat, all those different aspects that are part of a religious experience. So, where to from here then? Well, we've established that spirituality can offer meaning and comfort and connection in life. So let's take a look at meaning. Spirituality involves a search for significance in life. This quest for understanding can help individuals find purpose and value in their experiences, even adversity. Viktor Frankl talks a lot about this. There's some very good YouTube videos out there where Frankl goes into his experiences that he gained, in the concentration camps. Part of that search for meaning is asking questions such as, why am I here? And what is my purpose? Now, individuals in that process can uncover a greater sense of direction and importance in their actions and decisions. Just like Viktor Frankl, this pursuit of meaning can create a framework that helps to interpret the world and one's place in it. Now, let's go to the next point. So, spirituality is also about comfort. It provides a tremendous source of comfort during times of stress, suffering, or uncertainty. Many spiritual practices and beliefs emphasize acceptance, resilience, and the possibility of growth from hardship. Now, these elements can provide solace and a sense of calm amid life's storms. And I've seen this personally in the life of people who are struggling with, chronic illness, with a terminal diagnosis, and so on. Now, comfort can be derived from a belief in a higher power or a grand scheme of things, or it can be simply the experience of feeling less alone or overwhelmed in my struggles. Through an acceptance and through my resilience. The other very important aspect to all of this is the idea of connection. One of the absolutely fundamental aspects of spirituality is a sense of interconnectedness. Now, folks, you don't need mushrooms or acid. You can, with practice, do this without drugs. Although, don't let me discount the value in certain psychological conditions of potentially exploring that through a psychedelic experience. We're becoming better and better at providing people with options to the traditional pharmaceuticals through the use of MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, and so on. And there'll be, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapies that are going to help people get a greater sense of connection in a for want of a better word, more cosmic sense. Now, these connections can foster a sense of belonging and reduce feelings of loneliness and isolation and alienation. The three things that I talk about with men that we constantly are confronting because of patriarchal socialization is we withdraw from our connections, we isolate ourselves, we alienate ourselves. Now, some of the processes in establishing these connections, for example, are shared spiritual practices or beliefs that can create bonds between people, foster a sense of community, a yoga retreat, going on Zen meditation retreats. Now, fundamentally, a large part of this is about connection with oneself through introspective practices within a group. So we get to share our experiences. Now, all of this goes towards improving overall emotional health and well-being. Now, why is this so important in aging? Well, for a start, as we get older and older, we're grappling with mortality. It can be due to a health issue or loss of peers, loss of family. Our spirituality can provide a framework for understanding and coping with this mortality and the morality of it, because that sometimes comes up as well. That's another podcast. The other part of it is seeking purpose and meaning. As I've said, often in our third age, when we've lost or relinquished our capacity of a role, say, for example, as a CEO or an accountant or a doctor or whatever, we are then facing a place where it's empty, or it might be just empty for a period of time. And fostering a sense of spirituality can offset that. Right? So we get a new sense of purpose and a new sense of meaning. And I think it's really, really important that in this day and age, we seek something beyond the material. Ultimately, it doesn't matter whether you've got billions in the bank, you're going to die. And the process isn't about being dead, it's about how you get there. And the processes, who we're in connection with on that journey. The other part to this is also the need to find comfort amid loss. Loss is going to be inevitable. It's about changes in health, lifestyle, identity, and loss of people. So we are going to confront grief and disorientation more at this time than any other before. So in coming to terms with seeking out a process that helps us increase our sense of spiritual experience, this gives us a sense of greater awareness about flexibility and moving towards adapting to this situation, this journey wherein we're ultimately going to all end up in the same place. And what are some of those practices? Well, we've talked about some of this before. So it's about mindfulness, it's about meditation, anything that helps you to stay present and non-judgmental about your experience, encouraging acceptance of the aging body rather than resisting the whole thing or just experiencing frustration. There's a guy who's been bleeding his 17-year-old son and using his son's blood to transfuse into himself in a fight to stay young. Now, there is a host of issues where this is just, in my view, wrong. And we can talk about the morality and so on about this situation until the cows come home. But here is a man who's fighting the very inevitability of age. Now, okay, so I get that you might want to look good as a 60 or 70-year-old. There's some issues with that. I tend to see wrinkles as a sign of, a life worth having lived, we get wrinkles for a person in a sense. So, there's some major problems with that. So spirituality gives us a sense of managing loss. It also gives us this whole focus about a new purpose, something beyond, acquisition, beyond status, beyond competition, right? And through that process, we move into creating a relationship with oneself wherein we feel safe, wherein we feel secure, and from that comes an overwhelming sense of peace and acceptance. Now, does that just descend on us like, a euphoric haze? No, it doesn't. But when we give it space and we allow ourselves to immerse into that, that's where we can get in touch with it. And through that, I think the whole issue of further connection, and that could be with nature, with animals, it could be with something that I'm doing, something that I'm nurturing, like relationships, all sorts of stuff. But it's a reflective process. It's not reactive. I think one of the things that it would be really useful for most of us as men to do in this space is to stop each day for a moment and think and reflect in a space where we're not, striving, where we're not insisting on being productive, where we're not worried about how much time we have, but rather to sit in that space for itself, for the experience in itself, without judging it. Now, that can come about through targeted practice like mindful meditation, reflective journaling, prayer, yoga, time in nature, whatever it is that you want to do. But I also want to, encourage people to discuss this, think about this, share it with people. What are your thoughts? Create community around it. Bring it into your community, whether that's a men's group or whether it's, men in cooking or whatever it is. It all has its place. I mean, cooking can be an extraordinarily, spiritual process wherein we're in touch in that moment with all the creativity of what it takes to nourish our bodies. We also at this stage, need to often reconcile life choices. All of us at some point have fucked up. Is it worthwhile carrying the consequences of that for the rest of your life and punishing yourself? One of the things that I often point out is even if you've gone to jail, at some point is you get paroled. Now, some people don't because they've done some really heinous things, but most of us should really be allowed to let ourselves off the hook. And in this journey, right, in embracing our life journey, there can't but be a place for spirituality. It needs to be there. Yes, I'm looking after my mind. I'm looking after my body. I'm looking at my social connections. But, in essence, when we all put it together, 2 + 2 is more than 4. It's greater than the sum of its parts. And once we understand that whole process, once we understand it's an and also, not an either or proposition, philosophically, psychologically, and socially, then we're on a journey that is fulfilling, even in adversity. And often in adversity, even in adversity, we experience a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. So let me conclude this podcast and the spiritual journey of aging by saying, what are the main points? Well, the main points is understand spirituality, its connection with aging, explore spiritual practices, and navigate spiritual questions. Don't shy away from them. Neil deGrasse Tyson and Stephen Hawking were not correct when they said avoid philosophy. Now, I'm not going to go into the details exactly how they said it, but that was fundamentally the message. The very essence of spirituality and philosophy are interconnected about being, existentialism and ontology. And so I want to encourage you, the listener out there, man, woman, whatever, to see your own personal spiritual journey as an integral part of aging, still offering miles of opportunities for growth, for acceptance and connection. Once upon a time, even on a sexual level, people thought that by the time you're 60, it's done and dusted. Well, I can tell you now, from having worked with elderly people, that even on that basic physiological level, that ain't the case. We can just, in our sexual experience, have a meaningful, growing experience, no matter how old we are. We just got to be a little adaptive, right? Now, the reason why I dropped that in is that I'm foreshadowing another series of podcasts. Okay, so stay tuned. Discuss this, bring it up, think about it, reflect on it. Because this is the stuff that's going to enhance life. It might be tough, but, so what? No pain, no gain. So until next time, this is me signing off. If you want to know more about me and my work, please look me up on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmangreat.com. And there you'll find access to my books and some more thoughts. Until next time, this is me signing off.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit makinggoodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda at noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at NOIRTAINMENT.com.